When you join Sam's Club, you get way more than you'd expect. You don't just get value. You get insider tips from fellow members. You don't just pick up a pizza. You actually vote on its toppings. Bacon crumbles. You don't just visit the club, because with the Sam's Club app, everywhere can be the club. You don't just shop the latest finds. You find your people. And at the end of the day, isn't that what it's all about? Come join us. Sam's Club.
I see you.
Avatar: Fire and Ash is now streaming on Disney+. It's the film critics are calling the best Avatar yet.
Go, 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 go!
A true epic and completely jaw-dropping.
This is the only pure thing in this world.
Return to Pandora on Disney+.
It will be an adventure for the whole fam.
And watch the Oscar-winning phenomenon at home.
This is sick!
Avatar: Fire and Ash, now streaming on Disney+. Rated PG-13.
Today we're heading far beyond the familiar story of America's past into a time before Columbus, before the Vikings, and perhaps before many of the accepted timelines for human activity in the Americas. Our guest is researcher and author Rick Osmon, whose work investigates ancient sites, unusual artifacts, early transoceanic contact, and the possibility that America's prehistory may be far older and stranger than conventional accounts suggest. So let's get today's guest on. Rick, before the show we were talking something about King Arthur in America. Maybe we can start with that, and when we then talk about America's prehistory.
I believe we were talking about King Arthur and his having been killed in North America. And again, this is Alan Wilson, Baron Blackett's interpretation of chronicles that still exist in Wales and in the original script as it existed in Wales in that time period, which is roughly 570 AD. And it was also described, in 48 BC by Julius Caesar. So anyway, they had their own script, and it was distinct from any of the other scripts. Caesar, who was very adept, did not know this script. At any rate, you find this script along the Ohio Valley in a couple of different places. And the local legends have been that Prince Madoc founded his colony there. And that fortress at Devil's Backbone was a big part of it. Well, interestingly enough, archaeologically, there may be some agreement even amongst some of the now past archaeologists. If you go back to the early 20th century, the archaeologists were saying, these graves that we find here that we call slab-sided graves, that we call stone box graves, are similar in construction, like identical, and contemporary to what is called a slab-sided grave in Wales. And there were reports of finding bodies. Yeah, it is fascinating. And of course, it was dismissed pretty much out of hand by anybody who didn't live near Louisville, and by one lady at Mobile, Alabama, where they say that Prince Madoc came ashore. And she was a member of the Daughters of the American Revolution, and she garnered support, and they put up a plaque there on Mobile Bay commemorating that spot as where Prince Madoc and however many colonists entered North America. Well, here a few years ago, that plaque was dismantled and went into storage because the historians did not agree. Well, interestingly enough, when the French were there in 1702, which is, and by the way, that is where they established the original capital of La Louisiane, was at Mobile. They initially came in to a place that they called Massacre Island, because it was like hip deep in human bones over this huge area, several acres.
Sure.
And they subsequently moved the capital further upriver into the bay because of hurricanes and whatnot. But while there, they recorded an event where the younger brother of the governor had coerced, basically, one of the local Mobile Indians to take him out to a place that's called, on that map, that 1716 Delisle map, it's still called the Isle of Statue. and D'Iberville recorded that there were 5 statues on this mound, and that it was a man, a woman, a baby, an owl, and a bear. And he did not believe that they could possibly have been made by the local talent. And he was going to send them back to France. Well, there's no record of them ever getting to France or existing anywhere at this point in time. But they were yellowish in color, so they were kind of golden. So the golden bear. And if they went ashore there, then fought their way up the riverways, they would have ended up someplace in around Louisville as their final point. And the native traditions support that. But in between there, 2 years or so after they got ashore is when Arthur was killed. So however long it took him to get to that point at Louisville, Kentucky, or actually in Indiana across from Louisville, we don't know for sure, but Wilson thinks the whole period was about 4 years. And that halfway in between there, when Arthur was killed, his body was put into a cave, and this is what they interpret from the Colburn script Chronicles of Wales, that the body was sewn into 2 deer skins and placed in a cave to desiccate or dry or mummify. And that at the end of the 2 years, they started to bring him home because he was still the ruling king of Wales. His son was still in Wales. And anyway, they finally got the body back, but the son would not be of age for 2 more years, and they didn't trust the regent. So they said, oh, well, he's still in America. And they hid the body in another cave in Wales. Well, in Stoke Dry, you know where Stoke Dry is in England? It is the mural at the Stoke Dry Church. That's correct. Dated at 1000 AD, give or take. And what does it depict? Well, it depicts a king with a fleur-de-lis in the background, tied to a tree or a cross or something, and people, 2 individuals, shooting arrows into him. And although part of it's been destroyed, you can pretty well tell that it's about 20 arrows.
Wow.
And the figure to the left of the king shooting arrows into him has a large feathered headdress and a loincloth. And the figure to the right of him has a small feather headdress and a loincloth. And yet the historians say, oh, well, that depicts the martyrdom of King Edmund on December the 25th, whatever year that was, around 1000 AD. And he was martyred by the Danes, invading on Christmas Day wearing loincloths. Yeah, right.
Got a Sam's Cafe pizza order up.
You know the best part about this spicy Italian sausage? I voted for this topping. Yeah, just another perk of being a member. Come join us. Sam's Club.
I see you.
Avatar: Fire and Ash is now streaming on Disney+. It's the film critics are calling the best Avatar yet.
Go, 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 go!
A true epic and completely jaw-dropping.
This is the only pure thing in this world.
Return to Pandora on Disney+.
It will be an adventure for the whole family.
And watch the Oscar-winning phenomenon at home.
This is sick!
Avatar: Fire and Ash, now streaming on Disney+. Rated PG-13.
Even the Danes aren't that crazy. So I can tell people of Native Americans shooting arrows into King Arthur II, and that Alan Wilson has that part right. Anyway,
Wow.
Even 10,000 Welsh colonists, though, virtually starving when they left, and then fighting their way through a continent full of hostile Native Americans, probably could not build all these fortresses because they just didn't have the resources. But they could use them, and they probably used the ones that they all had a foreknowledge of, because otherwise they wouldn't have just navigated directly to them, which they apparently did. So apparently they had a record of some kind that said, okay, these rivers lead to these fortresses and these resources, particularly copper, which we'll come back to. So that knowledge pre-existed that 570 AD time frame in Wales. It was in Wales, otherwise they would not have had access to it. Or it could have been in Ireland too, because this was contemporary to this guy named St. Brendan the Navigator. And another interesting factoid, if you go to the chapel at the United States Naval Academy at Annapolis, one of the stained glass windows of that chapel certainly seems to me to depict a leather boat and monk-like figures sailing the Atlantic.
Wow.
So does the U.S. Naval Academy know something the rest of us don't? I think they may. But St. Brendan, who died, to the best of my recollection, I don't have that in front of me, in 592, would have sailed some 30 years earlier, according to history. So that would have been roughly contemporary to when St. Matic was blown out to sea for that extraterrestrial impact event.
Sure.
So they could have crossed paths, you know.
It's
Certainly not all of it. A lot of it did. The old, what's called the old copper culture, made tens of thousands of artifacts of copper. No, you're still talking tens of thousands of pounds and of artifacts. But when you look at the amount of copper, then you're talking millions of pounds. Well, yeah, I think that, and I'm certainly not alone in this part, that there was enough copper mined from the Lake Superior region, that would be mostly upper Michigan, Wisconsin, a little bit into Minnesota, and certainly Isle Royal, to fuel the Bronze Age of the Old World. And we have archaeologically found evidence of smelting bronze, brass, and a few other alloys in the Americas, in Mayan and Incan and Aztec time. We've also found a tiny head off a figurine in Mexico that was excavated archaeologically that dates to about 200 AD, and it was found under the floor of a 14th century Aztec house.
Wow. Wow.
But it's definitely of Roman origin. Yeah. So the Ninth Roman Legion, who disappeared from history in 117 AD, and whose one singular officer shows up as a very important person in Roman history in 142 AD, may have had that mission, much like Hadrian's Wall controlled trade between, Great Britain and Scotland. Mm-hmm. And Petra controlled trade in Petra. Well, the rivers would have been the only trade routes in North America.
Right.
And all these fortresses that dotted all these rivers would have been placed, and are indeed placed, to control traffic on those rivers. And in a few cases, both river traffic as well as cross-country traffic, where that converged. One of those is in Pennsylvania. It is, and it goes almost to copper country, but not quite.
Almost.
You would have to ford somewhere, or somehow get across land to continue the journey. And there has been a lot of speculation, of course, in Minnesota, that Vikings, I don't like the word Vikings, they were Norse, certainly, that they were there, including the Kensington Runestone, which is how Scott Wolter got involved in all this in the first place. But the evidence is pretty strong. It's just not conclusive of when, where, how long, how much, etc. Yes, it in Upper Michigan, what they call the Keweenaw Peninsula, when they were mining it actively from the 1850s up until, 1950s, it was considered the purest copper on the planet. And it was, like you said, up to 99.95% pure copper. It is even more so. The trace elements, I guess you'd say, the inconsistencies, the trash that was within the copper was almost always silver, which made it an interesting alloy. And some of the evidence of when the mining began in Michigan in particular is amazing, because it is as much as 8,000 BC. That's pretty extreme, but it is in keeping with when the ice finally retreated.
Mhm.
Now, the interesting thing about Keweenaw Peninsula is at that time, it was nearly covered with pure copper because it had been broken off by the glaciers and deposited there. You had giant boulders. In fact, one of them survives. It's about 28 ton of pure copper.
Wow.
All you got to do is break off a piece. And you can anneal it with charcoal, but you cannot smelt it with charcoal. So you've got at least 10,000 years of mining of pure copper, essentially.
Wow.
Now let's go back and look at when the Bronze Age started in the Old Worlds. And it is, in essence, 3,800 BC, give or take. And yet there are copper implements in North America that go back 6,000 to 7,000 years.
Yeah.
But we only know that by context because you cannot directly date copper. Take into account that a lot of the copper and bronze artifacts in particularly the Eastern Med from about 3,800 to 3,000 BC had small, very, very small deposits of silver in it. So all the archaeologists and metallurgists in the old world were saying, I wonder why the ancients put silver in their bronze. And you got all the mining engineers in Upper Michigan saying, I wonder what happened to all this copper.
Yeah.
Millions of pounds of it. It is. And let's go to another part of the world. In Belize, you have Pumapunto,
Yeah.
I think it's in Bolivia, high up in the air.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
So you've got all these copper staples that hold those stones together there, and there's no source of copper there. That was tin. So you had, and there are only 2 of those staples that survive, as far as I know. Been melted down, sold off as scrap or something. They're gone. But if we could get a sample of that and match it against the raw copper, float copper from Upper Michigan, then I think we might actually find a pretty close match.
Yeah.
But if they have Michigan copper in Bolivia, high up in the mountains, by the way, and probably just up the mountain from where the tin mines were, then you have all you need to make bronze. And yet there's not much bronze in the Americas. The other major source of tin in the entire world was in Cornwall, and it was known as the Tin Islands.
Now, Ricky,
Sure. And it still relates back to King Arthur. But really quickly, King Arthur legend says he was conceived at Tintagel, and Tintagel exists today. Remnants of the castle exist there today.
Yeah.
But if you look at it on Google Earth, you got this little island out there, and then you got the main village on the mainland, and from Google Earth at the right elevation, it looks like there's a woman's face there on the village side looking up at the island. She's a homely woman, but
fascinating.
we'll come back to that one in the last half hour because
Sure.
it's an important piece of evidence.
Sure.
But the Roman inhabited Britain, not Great Britain, not England, Britain, or Brute, or Brit. And they did it from 43 AD to roughly 430 AD. But from 78 AD to 108, the 9th Roman Legion was there building fortification. They built the fort at York. They built a couple others. They built 2 forts at York. When
Got a Sam's Cafe pizza order up.
You know the best part about this spicy Italian sausage? I voted for this topping. Yeah, just another perk of being a member. Come join us. Sam's Club.
I see you.
Avatar: Fire and Ash is now streaming on Disney Plus. It's the film critics are calling the best Avatar yet.
Yeah! Go, 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 go!
A true epic and completely jaw-dropping.
This is the only pure thing in this world.
Return to Pandora on Disney Plus.
It will be an adventure for the whole family.
And watch the Oscar-winning phenomenon at home.
This is sick!
Avatar: Fire and Ash, now streaming on Disney Plus. Rated PG-13.
Boadicea, I think was her name, local queen, kicked their ass in 78 AD. They fortified, and they did it as a wood fortress. To fall militarily, she fell to espionage. So they built these fortresses. They were good at it. They built 2 bridges across the Rhine River for Julius Caesar. They were, in effect, field engineers and soldiers, and they disappeared from history. So who might have built 45 or so fortresses across the Ohio Valley? People have been sailing for at least 120,000 years, and the archaeological record supports that.
For sure.
We are talking about ancient America, but that's really the ancient world, because in my opinion, and pretty much the basis of my book, people have been sailing for a very long time, and some of them knew where they were. Yeah, and that's important because the Romans, in addition to conquering Great Britain, the Romans also conquered Carthage. But when the Romans conquered anything, what they went after, just like the example of Archimedes, was the knowledge. So Carthage, if they had any written history of any kind, and we know that they did, the Romans captured all that. That would have included all of the secret trade routes. Well, yeah, and they had yacht races and such. But they also had a vast trading network. They had mines in Spain. They had fields throughout northern Africa and even into Spain and Britain. They had colonies everywhere.
Sure.
Syracuse, where Archimedes was one of their colonies. You could almost never be out of sight of land and still sail to all the outlying areas. Yeah. Isle of Man being an important one because it's a melting pot genetically.
Sure.
But the Brits, I should say that the Roman, in the case of the Ninth Legion, who were there for a long period of time, they became British. They might still wear the Roman uniform, but when they went any place to do anything, they talked to the natives in their language. Yeah. And into the civil life as well. If they picked up a political system that worked a little better because of one particular rule, they'd pick up that rule. If they picked up a religious system that kind of fit in, then they would very slowly try to introduce their own, but for a long time it would be integrated. Oh wait, that's going on yet today. At any rate, the entire Roman Ninth Legion would have spoken probably several different languages, would have used several different scripts, and they would have been very well traveled because they've been in North Africa to the Near East, Macedonia, Gaul, Germanic. They tried to get into Ireland. It didn't work. They weren't very good for them. They did that in a lot of places, but it still isn't in the Roman histories that way, which brings to the point that not everything, the Romans were great historians, but they didn't tell everything. Oh, wait, that goes on today too. Well, no, I think they inherited that from one of their conquests, but the connections are just too great to completely ignore. I maintain that it's a plausible hypothesis that either the Carthaginians or the Romans built the fortresses along the Ohio Valley, and that the Welsh used them, and possibly several other different colonization efforts used them. And it doesn't look like an American bison. Particularly in Kansas, there's a depiction not only of the bull, but also of Anubis, which, yeah, that one's pretty wild. I'm sorry, yeah, in Kansas. The Anubis Cave is what it's called. And Gloria Farley documented her study of it pretty well. She was pretty old at the time and somewhat decrepit, but she was still very willful to get that done, and she did it. So now it's a matter of study rather than a matter of disregard. So the idea that there was never any old world writing in North America is to put it in the Great British vernacular, bollocks. And not just Minoan. That's how the French did it initially. They just put up trading posts. And a lot of it goes back to the copper and the other resources, because even in Ireland, you have what's called the Bell Beaker culture, or Bell Beaker people. And they were quite tall, they were redheaded, and they dealt in copper in the last half of their era.
Yeah.
And in fact, there is one that I know of, artifact, that was found in Ireland that was assayed, and the conclusion was that it was Michigan copper.
What?
Well, I could not possibly list all the occasions of newspaper articles written about giant stone and mounds in North America. They are literally in the hundreds.
Yeah.
And in fact, some of them were multiple burials. One of them is quite local to me, and it was published in 1818 in the adjoining county to where I live now.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very well documented for frontier era, but it was well enough documented that I could go back and check official records that, yes, the witnesses listed in the newspaper account really lived there at that time. And in fact, one of them was the local constable and the captain of the militia. So he was a responsible person. So to completely discount these stories as merely to sell newspapers is ludicrous, especially when you consider that the Journal of the Smithsonian Institution on several different occasions listed such accounts as part of their publication. So it's not just a fantasy, it's in the scientific literature. So are pygmies, 3 to 4 feet tall,
Wow.
on the island of Flora, I believe it's called. Depends on whose account you're accepting, because there are still accounts of very small people in Indonesia. And the great thing about the Homo floresiensis discovery was that they were associated with tools commensurate with the body size of these people, and evidence that they were hunting the pygmy elephants with those weapons. So yeah, it's a pretty well documented thing. And even more interesting to me is there is one body of researchers who believe that there are some anatomical differences that are significant, making them a separate species, and that the most significant is the shape of the wrist bone, that they are not completely human in that regard. And yet they used tools. They had a society. They established shelter that lasted for thousands of years. Granted, it was a natural structure, but they knew to use it. And they're 3 feet tall. They'd be perfect to mine things, wouldn't they? They were everywhere.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, in the case of one of the mummies in the Gobi, 6'4", 5", pretty tall, not a giant by today's standards, but they would have been giant by standards of when that person died 3,000 years ago, or up to 14,000 years ago, depending on which report you believe. He was redheaded and he was wearing tartar. Whether that is just a ethnocentric view or whether that's real, I have yet to determine, but either way, it's an interesting bit of data. So who mined the copper? We have one group of people that could move ships across an ocean, and we had another group of people who were diminutive and sophisticated enough to make stone tools, and they were mining copper using stone tools. But in some cases, those tools weighed 18 pounds apiece, something that you or I could not wield effectively.
Yeah.
Yeah, they avoid them at all costs. And yes, that's the account. Well, where it gets interesting for me, and what I will be presenting, is that Joseph Smith only made one depiction of the characters he saw in the golden plates. That is the script, what was written there, how the characters looked. I can talk about one thing very clearly,
Yeah.
and I claim it as my own discovery, although there's so many people contributed to my being able to do that.
Okay.
Lee Pennington being primary, I think. There is a cave in northeastern Alabama called Welsh Caves, and inscribed in the stone over, it's actually a series of caves, inscribed in the stone over one of the caves is a character that is reminiscent, certainly, of the Colburn alphabet, Colburn script of Wales, and it would be an A character inscribed over a Y character, or vice versa. A very similar character appears in the only depiction that Joseph Smith ever did of the characters he saw in the Book of Mormon. And this one in Alabama is very, very old. There is another inscription, graffiti, if you will, nearby that is dated 1863, and it looks like it was carved yesterday by comparison.
But,
It does. There's a lot more to that particular story, but we're out of time. Yeah, according to the Church of Latter-day Saints, it was returned to the angel who gave it to Joseph Smith.
wait.
There are certainly beliefs in that direction.
Yeah.
I haven't gone there yet. I'll perhaps investigate that
That's
sometime soon. I know there are connections in your part of the world to Sirius. I think it was all those things plus navigation. Very high incidence of Rh negative blood type. Well, I'll come back and we'll do a whole show about the DNA. The full title is The Graves of the Golden Bear, Ancient Fortresses and Monuments of the Ohio Valley, published by Grave Distractions Publications. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Nook, iBooks, Google Books, Smashword, Diesel, half a dozen other places, and Ancient American Magazine. Perhaps there's something in the works, but I'm not at liberty to talk about it. And she garnered support, and they put up a plaque there on Mobile Bay commemorating that spot as where Prince Madoc and however many colonists entered North America. Well, here a few years ago, that plaque was dismantled and went into storage because the historians did not agree.
Did you know Sam's Club isn't a store? It's actually a club. With cool finds and like a whole community. It's a club.
Of course, Jason. It's in the name. Sam's Club.
Oh, yeah. Come join us. Sam's Club.
I see you.
Avatar: Fire and Ash is now streaming on Disney Plus. It's the film critics are calling the best Avatar yet.
Go, 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 go!
A true epic and completely jaw-dropping.
This is the only pure thing in this world.
Return to Pandora on Disney Plus.
It will be an adventure for the whole family.
And watch the Oscar-winning phenomenon at home.
This is sick!
Avatar: Fire and Ash, now streaming on Disney Plus. Rated PG-13.
Well, interestingly enough, when the French were there in 1702, which is, and by the way, that is where they established the original capital of La Louisiane, was at Mobile. They initially came in to a place that they called Massacre Island, because it was like hip deep in human bones over this huge area, several acres.
Sure.
And they subsequently moved the capital further upriver into the bay. Back to the early 20th century, the archaeologists were saying, you know, these graves that we find here that we call slab-sided graves, that we call stone box graves, are similar in construction, like identical, and contemporary to what is called a slab-sided grave in Wales. And there were reports of finding bodies. Yeah, it is fascinating. And of course, it was dismissed pretty much out of hand by anybody who didn't live near Louisville, and by one lady at Mobile, Alabama, where they say that Prince Madoc came ashore. And she was a member of the Daughters of the American Revolution because of hurricanes and whatnot. But while there, they recorded an event where the younger brother of the governor had coerced, basically, one of the local Mobile Indians to take him out to a place that's called, on that map, that 1716 Delisle map, it's still called the Isle of Statue. And D'Iberville recorded that there were 5 statues on this mound, and that it was a man, a woman, a baby, an owl, and a bear. And he did not believe that they could possibly have been made by the local talent. and he was going to send him back to France. Well, there's no record of him ever getting to France or existing anywhere.
I see you.
Avatar: Fire and Ash is now streaming on Disney Plus. It's the film critics are calling the best Avatar yet.
Yeah! Go, 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 go!
A true epic and completely jaw-dropping.
This is the only pure thing in this world.
Return to Pandora on Disney Plus
It will be an adventure for the whole fam.
and watch the Oscar-winning phenomenon at home.
This is sick!
Avatar: Fire and Ash, now streaming on Disney Plus. Rated PG-13.
I'm Glenn Washington from Snap Judgment, the storytelling podcast from KQED. Imagine an iconic piece of paradise overrun by one of the most horrific fires in recent memory. Everyone flees, everyone, except one person who decides to fight the flames alone. The moment when nature, institutions, and technology fail at the exact same time. That's All Systems Down, a new Snap Judgment miniseries from KQED. Tap to listen now.
This point in time.